Okay. Hey gang, what's up? So Alicia Cross here, and I'm doing something a little different today. I'm coming to you from my kitchen rather than my office. So welcome to my kitchen. And if you do not know me, I am a personal trainer, a wellness coach, and a yoga instructor. And I have been helping clients just like you reach their goals, get healthy, feel good, look better. And I've been doing this for over 18 years. Health and fitness is not my side hustle. I like to say I eat, sleep, and breathe this stuff. I do it 24/7. And part of that includes coming to you live every week. And this week's video, we are talking about processed foods. This was inspired by a question that I got from one of my clients in a coaching call. So let's see. So before we get into that, if you are here with me live, thank you for watching. Say hi, give me a wave so I know that you're here. And whether you are watching live or you're watching this as a replay later, thank you for watching. And if you have any questions or any comments, please post them here. I would love to chat more with you about this. So processed foods. You know, I'm always talking to you about eliminating processed foods. And in one of my coaching calls I had this week, the client, she was kind of confused about processed foods, yet she sees me raving about things like the Beyond sausage, the Beyond meat. Have you tried the Beyond meat or the Beyond sausage? They're really good. I do like the sausage better. So that is, yes, technically processed, but here I am talking about eating more whole foods. So I want to clarify this. I want to, one, say that I'm going to choose my words more carefully, because what I'm talking about when I'm talking about processed food is this ultra processed food or highly processed food. And so I'm going to clear up some of that confusion today, because in my mind, I know what I'm talking about. I know that it makes sense to me, but they say communication is not what you say, it's what the other person hears. So I definitely have to clear this up. So we're going to clear this up today with my favorite. We're going to do definitions, why processed food is bad, and we're in my kitchen because I'm going to show you some of the processed food that I eat. So processed food is on a spectrum. So down at the low end of the spectrum, you have things like baby carrots. You know, they didn't come out of the ground like that. Somebody made them look like that and put them in a bag. Even your meats. So I don't eat meat, but if you're eating meat and you're thinking, well, I'm not eating processed food, I'm eating chicken. If you didn't go to the market and buy a live chicken, you're eating processed food. Somebody made it look like that to get it into the package so that you could buy it. So there are a lot of foods that have a step that's taken in order for you to buy it. So that would be, like I said, pre-cut vegetables, produce, chicken, anything that is frozen. So if you're eating frozen vegetables, something, even if the ingredient in your frozen peas is just peas, right? They didn't come out of the ground frozen. Some step happened to get them frozen in that bag. So grains, rice, quinoa. I have no idea what quinoa looks like when it comes out of the ground, but I buy it in that package and I consider that a whole food. Other things, nuts. If you're buying nuts that are not in a shell, right? That's a process. Somebody got them out of their shell. Even if you're eating things like olives and they've taken the pit out of the olive, that's gone through a process. So there's a lot of things that are steps to get them in the package so you can buy them, but we still kind of think of those as whole foods. But really a whole food is if you went and picked an apple off the tree. And even your apples that you buy in the grocery store, right? They have some kind of coating on them to make them a little shinier. Technically, that's a process. So that's the low end of the spectrum. It's something has happened to it to get it to you. And then as you move up the spectrum, you get into a processed food that still has what are called culinary ingredients. So these are still ingredients you would find in your kitchen, like adding salt or sugar, oil, fat, or other substances that are still natural. So maybe you could think of this like maybe peanut butter. So if you're buying peanut butter that has, it's peanuts, but maybe it has some salt and some sugar in it, that could be the next level up. Or anything, what else has like a fat added to it? I wonder if this would be like butter. So butter we might think of as pretty natural and whole, but that has a couple of ingredients in it. It's definitely, has some things added to it to make it into butter. And then, so that's like processed with culinary ingredients. And then there's processed foods. So that is adding salt or sugar, other substances used, wait a minute, let's get the sentence right. Other substances of culinary use to unprocessed or minimally processed foods such as canned foods and simple breads and cheese. Okay, so that's like another process. So turning something into a canned food, a bread, or a cheese. So cheese is a really good example. It has like a couple of ingredients, but there's a process to make it into cheese. Maybe butter would fit more into that category. But basically you could say that those two are like processed foods. So you have your minimally processed, which again, getting cut vegetables is minimally processed. Then your processed foods that they still have natural ingredients in them, but they were put together and there was some steps to get them there. And then we have what I'm really talking about when I say processed foods, and I'm going to change my language and start saying ultra processed foods. And here's the definition. You know, I love definitions. Formulations. Like already, does that sound like food? No, that sounds like a science experiment. Formulations of several ingredients which, besides salt, sugar, oils, and fat, include other substances not used in culinary preparation, in particular flavors, colors, sweeteners, emulsifiers, and other additives used to imitate sensorial qualities of unprocessed or minimally processed food and their culinary preparations, or to disguise undesirable qualities of the final product. That was a long definition, but to me that doesn't sound like something I even want to eat. So it's adding things to disguise undesirable effects of the foods that they are, not the foods, but the chemicals they're putting in there. They're putting something else to disguise the undesirable effect of that. So that is ultra processed foods. The examples of that would be sodas, any kind of packaged snacks or desserts, packaged baked goods, something like a chicken nugget, what else? Instant noodles and soups. So these are things you can think of like the frozen meals. What else? This would be like processed meats, lunch meat, any kind of candy, chips, probably crackers. All these things would kind of would fall under that ultra processed food. So the standard that you're going to look for when you're looking at your ingredients is, does it have 5 or more ingredients? So 5 or more ingredients will probably qualified as ultra processed foods. So what I've heard is that if it's 5 or more ingredients, you're probably getting down into those additives, those like not real food additives, things you can't find in your kitchen. And I'm going to show you an exception, I believe, to that. So regular processing has like 1 step. So again, we talked about that. Baby carrots in a bag, that's technically processed. If you're buying a chicken breast, it's processed because somebody had to, do what they do to the chicken. And then you're going to have the secondary stage, which can include, like I talked about, shelling nuts. And then you're going to have, that's all still in the first stage. Sorry about that. And then the second stage is when you're doing something like baking, freezing, canning. So if somebody's already kind of cooked something, so if you're buying something like frozen peas or the peas aren't, or if you're buying a frozen vegetable, it's already cooked. It's not a raw vegetable. You just heat it up. Baking or freezing, canning. So all those things had to undergo some kind of process to get into that package. And then the third level, that's where it becomes ultra processed, where now they're injecting things and adding preservatives, sugars, artificial sweeteners, something that you would not find in your kitchen cabinet. So that's another thing you can look at on the label. If it's something that you don't have in your cabinet or you couldn't just easily go out and buy, that's a signal that it's a highly or an ultra processed food. Okay, so what is the problem? Why am I always talking about these ultra processed foods and eliminating them from your diet, or we'll say seriously reducing them from your diet? So ultra processed foods make up half of all calories consumed in the US diet, and they contribute to nearly 90% of the added sugar intake. So our sugar intake here in the US is just through the roof. 90% of that is coming from processed foods. So eliminating the processed foods is a way to eliminate that added sugar that we're getting way too much of. So the World Health Organization, this is the guideline I use, recommends that 10% of your calories come from sugar, all sugars, natural or added. So for your average 2,000 calorie diet, that's 200 calories. which is not much. I mean, that may be like 2 pieces of fruit. So we're blowing right through that. And let's see, let me get this fact right. Added sugars was far more. So people who are kind of living off these ultra processed foods are getting more than 80% of their calories from added sugars. That sounds like a lot, but that's what it says. Okay, so only those Americans whose ultra processed food consumption was within 20% had an average sugar intake that fell below that maximum limit. Okay, so remember the maximum limit was 10%, which is 200 calories. So if you are eating less than 20% of your foods from ultra processed foods, you're going to fall within that limit. So that might be a pretty good guideline. So 20%. If you were eating, so for you'd have 4 meals and then a processed meal. So maybe that's like every other day you're having a highly processed food, and you may not even be eating that many highly processed foods. I am eating them, and I'm going to show you what they are. So remember, we're not talking about minimally processed or just the average processed. It's highly ultra processed. So we'll talk about what those are. So think about every other day you're having no more than 1 ultra processed meal, and even that might be a stretch for you. That you may be looking at maybe once a week or once or twice a week. And the thing is with ultra processed food, this includes eating out, and not only fast food, because a lot of these foods that you're getting from the restaurants, unless you know that they're making things from scratch, you don't know what it is, what package they're opening to put it on your plate. Like even if it's a chicken breast, that could be pumped full of things to make it more, 1, to make it way more, and 2, just to make it more tasty. You don't know what's going in it unless you know the reputation of the restaurant. And there are definitely some good ones out there that don't, they are very proud of that reputation, that they're not using foods like that. So definitely, if you are eating out, unless you know, you're going to count that as a ultra processed food. Okay, so what's the problem? Again, what's the problem with this? So some research has revealed that specifically ultra processed foods can cause health problems, including increased risk of obesity and cancer. So there's a lot of controversy, and a big part of the problem is it's just very political and financial. So you gotta pick your sources, and it's always going to be safer just to eat whole food. So if you're seeing these studies and you're not sure what to believe, I just don't think that we're gonna come out the other side of this and say, oh yeah, those chemicals, they were really good for us. I don't think anybody's gonna say that. So you just kind of err on the safe side. So at the very least, a lot of these chemicals are shown to be endocrine disruptors, and that your endocrine system is your hormones. So the endocrine glands release hormones. I talk about hormones a lot, keeping your hormones in check, keeping your hormones in balance, which is super important, not only for weight loss, but just your mood, your sleep, your health, all these things. And I know when you hear hormones, a lot of you think sex hormones. I had a student who said, I don't have hormones, I had a hysterectomy. Your hormones are not just your sex hormones. You have over 50 different hormones in your body. Cortisol, the stress hormone, oxytocin, the cuddle hormone. I talked to you about leptin and ghrelin. So leptin is the hormone that tells you you've had enough to eat, and ghrelin is the hormone that tells you it's time to eat. Maybe you saw that post I did this week about the milkshake study. It's really interesting if you didn't see it. They took one milkshake, it had 300 calories. They gave it to 2 different groups of people. One group, it was told it had 100 calories. It was a healthy, smoothie. And they gave it to another group and told them it had 600 calories. It was an indulgent, high-fat, high-sugar dessert. And the group that had what they thought was the 600-calorie dessert had a 3 times higher drop in ghrelin than the other group. Ghrelin is the thing that tells you you're hungry. So they thought they had eaten 600 calories. So that hormone that said, go find food, dropped. The other group thought they only had 100 calories, but they didn't have the same response. So they both ate the same thing. They should have had the same response. Doesn't work that way. So you're balancing your leptin and your ghrelin, really important. Hormone melatonin for sleep. Dopamine, the pleasure hormone, right? We always want that hit of dopamine. And there's hormones, there's so many more, but things that control like your heart rate and your blood pressure. So all these things are going to, of course, affect your stress. And you could just imagine the cycle of things that could happen if you're highly stressed because of these hormones. So at the very least, a lot of these additives that they're adding to the ultra processed foods have been shown to be endocrine disruptors, messing with your hormones. Okay, so what else am I talking about? And you might remember, I think it was in the video last week, I mentioned this really good article, Obesity on the Brain, that one of my clients saved me from Scientific American magazine. So they did a study where they, very controlled, had people kind of in a hospital setting where they could monitor the calories that were eating. They could give them exactly, the foods they wanted them to eat. They had two groups. They gave one of them a whole foods diet. They gave the other group a highly processed diet. And not only that, they also switched the groups halfway through. They found that when people were eating the highly processed diet, they routinely ate over 500 more calories per day. 500 more calories. Now that means that what they hypothesize is that this unnatural combination of foods and chemicals, quote unquote foods that they're putting, are messing with those signals in your brain that recognize that you've had enough to eat, right? So you still have maybe that ghrelin hormone that's telling you keep eating, or you're not able to produce the leptin hormone that says you've had enough. So if you're trying to lose weight and creating a calorie deficit, just creating a calorie deficit of 500 calories, that's huge. So just not even switching, to logging or tracking, that's what I was talking about last week, but switching to a whole foods diet, you're going to just inherently take in more calories and you're going to be more full. So yeah, these food combinations, they're not recognized by the brain. We don't know when we've had enough to eat. And so we keep eating. So that's the issue with some of the issues with processed foods. So you can definitely look up some things to avoid, but here's some things you want to be on the lookout for. Palm oil, high fructose corn syrup, artificial sweeteners, and there's a whole list of those. And then there's some preservatives, sodium benzoate, potassium benzoate, BHA, BHT, any kind of artificial colors, blue 1 and 2, green 3, red 3, yellow 6, MSG, sodium nitrate. Sodium nitrate is in like lunch meats. Propyl gylate, potassium bromate, that's in bread. So that's just like the top 10 list, but you can certainly search and find, more things. But again, if you're looking at an ingredient list on the back of a package, and you see things in the ingredients that you don't have in your cabinet. You don't have potassium benzoate in your cabinet. You can't go to the store, into the spice aisle, and buy sodium benzoate, right? So that's a good indication that it's ultra processed food and something you want to avoid. Okay, so I grabbed just some ingredient lists off the internet from some foods that I do not have in my house, but I'm going to show you some foods I do have. So let's say you're eating a lean cuisine for lunch. You think you're doing good, right? It says lean, must be good. It says cuisine, it must be real. This is sesame chicken. Can you just see the list? That is all the ingredients that I printed for sesame chicken. So 5 or more ingredients, check. Things that I do not have in my cabinet, check. Citric acid, sodium citrate, monocalcium phosphate, thiamine monotrite. I don't know. So definitely look through the ingredients, and if it's something you don't know what it is, you don't know how to say it, one of my favorites, modified cornstarch or modified food starch, that's another one, it's not really telling you what it is. Maltodextrin, autolyzed yeast extract. Yeah, if it doesn't sound like food, it's probably not. Isolated soy protein. So yeah, any kind of soy protein soy isolate, stay away from that. So that's lean cuisine. Sounds healthy, right? But that's a lot of things in there. Okay, how about smart ones? Santa Fe rice and beans. That sounds good, right? Okay, that's the list of ingredients. Probably more than 5. What we got here? There it is, modified food starch. What else we got in here? Xanthium gum. So that's like for binding. There's that thiamine monotrate. I don't know what that is. Sodium phosphate, guar gum, I don't know how to say this, carrageenan. So carrageenan is from seaweed, and you know there have been some studies to show that there's some issues there, especially and also with guar gum, these binders. So the thing is, these things, they appear safe in small quantities. We maybe not sure if they're in large quantities. And it's kind of like the stevia thing, right? So we think like stevia is natural, but stevia is not natural. The white powder you're getting in the packet is a far cry from what that plant looks like coming out of the ground. And so I think that's the issue with some of these. It's coming from something natural, like the carrageenan coming from seaweed, but you know, we've turned it into something it's not like the original product anymore. There's this maltodextrin again. Natural flavor. Oh, you got to watch out for anything that says natural flavor. If it's I've heard that it's actually more dangerous if it says natural flavor than artificial flavor. And this says contains soy lecithin. You want to stay away from soy lecithin, 100%. What else do we got? Okay, so yeah. Other than that, it's some veggies in there, and then I printed the ingredients for Amy's ravioli bowl. So Amy's is a healthier choice. It's still a frozen meal. It's still processed. And so here's those ingredients. So smaller, but yes, it's more than 5. But if we look at the ingredients, okay, filtered water, durum wheat, semolina flour, wheat flour, spinach. It has some fake cheese, so it has tofu, soybeans, magnesium chloride, I believe that's used as a preservative, water, coconut milk, tapioca syrup, olive oil, nutritional yeast, lemon juice, onions. Some of these are just redundant because it's telling you what's in the sauce and what's in the pasta and what's in the cheese. Tomato puree, filtered water, organic, and here's where we get to the bottom. So organic onions, extra virgin olive oil, basil, sea salt, organic garlic, organic cane sugar, black pepper. Okay, so there's a lot of ingredients, but there's not the same kind of chemicals and things you can't pronounce. So while it would fall under that highly processed because it is a prepared meal and has more than 5 ingredients, you can see how there are better choices that you can make if you need something that's fast and easy. So something like Amy's versus one of these other brands. And so now I'm going to show you some of the things that I eat, and we'll look at the labels. So speaking of Amy's, I like to have Amy's soups. We keep a bunch of these Amy's soups around, and this is the same thing. It has a bunch of ingredients, but when you look at the ingredients, they are mostly vegetables. This one doesn't have, and it's really when you get down to the bottom of the list, that's where you got to look out for. So if you jump to the bottom, the bottom of this list has safflower oil, black pepper, lemongrass, orange peel. So it's not ending with those chemicals because, right, the thing that has the most of will be at the top, and then as you go down, it's less and less. So this does not have a ton of things that I want to avoid. It's got that magnesium chloride. Again, that's probably some kind of preservative. But so I like to have these soups. There's a bunch of different flavors that are vegan and gluten-free. We like chickpea pasta here. And let's see, where are my ingredients? Chickpeas, tapioca, pea protein, xanthium gum. So not bad. I got 4 ingredients. What else? So this, you've seen me, this is one of our to-go quick meals. We put this in the crock pot with something. I love Wegmans brand because their brands will say that it's vegan, gluten-free, and lactose-free. A lot of store brands just have cross-contamination warnings. So Wegmans is a great brand if you are like me, you have food sensitivities. And this one has tomato puree, diced tomatoes, sugar, salt, soybean oil, extra virgin olive oil, diced onions, basil, spices, dried garlic. Okay, so that has 10 ingredients, but they were all things I could pronounce. So I feel pretty good about this, especially since we're using this as, okay, we just need to make something quick. think this is a pretty good choice for a quick go-to meal. And let's see. All right. Now, I know it said palm oil on the list. I don't fully understand what the problem with palm oil is, but these little packets, they have peanuts and they have palm oil, but I love them so much. Okay, so you can put that strike against me. So other things that I eat that are considered processed, the bar, that's what I want to show you. I like bars, so I'm loving these RX bars. Now that I started eating eggs, I've switched to the RX bar. And ingredients here, dates, peanuts, egg whites, natural flavors, you got me again, and sea salt. So 1, 2, I did a terrible job counting, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 ingredients, it does have those natural flavors. And again, here's the thing too about these foods. Well, let me show you this one and then I'll tell you. So I also use protein powder. So this, of course, is going to be considered an ultra-processed food. There may be other protein powders out there that have less ingredients. You could definitely do some searching if you want to find something that's maybe you're just getting like the straight, I don't know, the hemp protein or the pea protein. I think there's some websites where you can order those and kind of customize the blend. So this does have several ingredients. And when we're talking about foods, hey Heather, hope you're doing well. So when we're talking about foods and eating healthy, I don't ever tell someone, well, you have to eat bars and you have to eat protein powder. That's not at all what I'm saying. I say you have to eat vegetables. You have to eat vegetables for sure. And the thing is, if you're coming to see me, there's something you want to work on. You either, you're not sleeping right, or you don't have enough energy, you don't like the way you look, you don't like the way you feel, you have inflammation, your joints hurt, something. So I'm going to offer you some suggestions, or together we're going to brainstorm some ideas of things you can add to your diet or things you can replace. Now, if you've been going to McDonald's for lunch and you want to switch to a protein smoothie, that's a great choice. But if you're eating, a salad and chicken breast for lunch, I'm not going to say, you need to have a protein smoothie. So I hope that makes sense to you. So it's just making better choices. If you are in a place where, like me, I'm in a place where I feel good. If I have an issue, I evaluate, I see what I can remove. I don't think that things like protein powder or Amy soups or tomato sauce are an issue for me. Things that I know my body doesn't like, sugar. I found when I eat a lot of sugar, I don't feel good. Also, one of the things I discovered doing tongue scraping. So an Ayurvedic practice is tongue scraping every morning. The day after, if I have something really sugary, like if I have ice cream, which I'm going to show you in a minute, I can see it in the tongue scraping. So I know that if my tongue is coated, there's other stuff going on in my digestive system that it doesn't like that. And I just know the way I feel. Same thing with alcohol. So I'm doing Sober October this month with my clients. Every month we have a new theme. And it's just the same thing with alcohol. I just don't feel good the next day. And the things that I drink also have a lot of sugar. I like cider, I like wine, so that's kind of also getting a lot of sugar, and I just don't feel good. So if there's things that I eat that I don't feel good, I take them out. And so that leads me perfectly into the pizza and ice cream. So probably the most highly processed foods I eat, because if they're in the freezer, they're going to be a little more processed. So I do have pizza once a week. I love the Daya pizza. And this has a lot of ingredients. And it does have things that I don't have in my cabinet. Xanthium gum, glycerin, titanium dioxide. Because this is gluten-free and vegan, so they gotta put a lot of things together to create this experience. This, I went for a long time without eating this. Now I'm kind of back to having pizza once a week. I have it on Fridays for lunch, and what I have found is if I eat it for dinner, I feel terrible the next day, but if I eat it for lunch, I feel okay. So that's coming back to an Ayurvedic principle of having a light dinner. Remember, I do smoothies for dinner. So if I'm eating this for dinner, I don't feel good the next day. And basically, I don't want a life without pizza, so I'm having pizza. Daya, I also use the Daya Shreds cheese. So remember we talked about sugar. Daya makes a cheesecake, and every time after I ate the cheesecake, I just had a terrible stomach ache. So I stopped eating the Daya cheesecake, and I think it's the sugar. because I eat all the other Daiya products like the pizza and the cheese, and I'm fine. So I think it's the sugar that gets me. So again, this is one of the really highly processed foods that I eat. So I do occasionally have ice cream. Of course, my ice cream is gluten-free and vegan. Maybe once a week, but lately it's been less. It's been like every other week I might have a little bit of this. So this one does have, when you get down to the bottom of the list, guar gum. Not too bad on everything else. Almond milk, tapioca starch, pea protein. It's got natural flavors. Oh, they're killer. But again, that's not an everyday thing. And then here are the Beyond Meat. If you've had this, I love it. The sausage, I think, is way better than the patties. And let's look at the ingredients for this. So remember, the ingredients that are at the top, it has more of, and as you go down, it has less. Water, pea protein isolate, refined coconut oil, sunflower oil, and then contains 2% or less of the following: rice protein, fava bean protein, natural flavors, potato starch, salt, fruit juice for color, vegetable juice for color, apple fiber, methyl cellulose, citrus extract, and calcium alginate casing. So yes, if you are trying to avoid processed foods, then you would not eat something like this. I like it. It's good. I need a little variety. I think as far as choices go, this is a good choice. This versus, I should have got some ingredients for something like, what are those, Morningstar soy burgers? Something like that you definitely don't want to be eating. So my first and foremost concern is that things are gluten-free, because I have celiac, that's not a choice. And I am technically vegetarian because I eat eggs, but I do not eat any dairy, so food has to fit into that. I do not eat, I don't think you'll find anything in here that has high fructose corn syrup. I won't eat that. What else? Artificial sweeteners. There is some stevia in my protein powder, but that's it. I won't do anything else. I don't love a ton of soy. There's not really any heavy soy products here. Sometimes there are things that do have a little bit of soy in them. I don't think I have anything that's soy isolate. I avoid that. I won't eat any bars or anything that have soy isolate. But if it's something that's maybe like on a special occasion, like we bought some cookies to take to game night, who knows, they fell into the gluten-free and vegan, or not vegan, but they were dairy-free. They had eggs. So those I ate, but those are going to be super rare special occasions. So I think I showed you, and yeah, there's other things, like, remember I said, technically almond butter, peanut butter, they're technically processed, but mine are organic, they don't have other ingredients in them. Nutritional yeast, I do like, let's look. So some other snacks that I like, I love these Skinny Pop little single serve bags, 100 calories, let's see, what's in them? Ingredients: popcorn, sunflower oil, and salt. Yay, not bad at all. Sometimes I have chips. You can see it's not even opened. I haven't even had any chips this week. Cassava root flour, sunflower oil, sesame seed, sea salt, and rosemary extract. So just start looking at your labels. If there's a bunch of food on there, quote unquote food, that you can't pronounce, it's something that you don't have in your cabinet, you couldn't buy it on, you couldn't go to the spice aisle and buy it, then just really make a decision if that's something that you want to eat or not. And if you make the decision and you want to eat it, fine, enjoy it. If you're thinking, well, maybe this is an issue, maybe this is contributing to, whatever thing I'm dealing with, or whatever, obstacle or hurdle that I'm dealing with in my life right now, whatever challenge, maybe you try removing it and seeing if you feel any better or any different. And if it's not the thing, then you add it back in. And it could be random things. Maybe you're having headaches or migraines or joint pain. You could be having a reaction to something, and especially if it's something you're having a lot of in your diet. So those are my processed foods that I eat. So I'm going to definitely change my language, make sure I'm saying to eliminate or seriously minimize highly or ultra processed foods in your diet. So remember that stat said people whose calories are no more than 20% coming from the highly processed foods, their sugars fell into a good limit. So if you wanted to use that as a guideline, so 20% would be 4 meals and a processed meal. So if you're eating, say you're eating 4 meals a day, so every other day would be 1 processed meal. That's a way that you could look at it. If you're eating 3 meals a day, it'd probably be like every 2 days maybe, if I'm doing my math right. So limiting those highly processed, ultra processed meals, seeing how you feel, and where can you make some good substitutes. So if you are, I talked about this last week, if you're eating cereal from a box and lean cuisine for lunch and you're going to McDonald's for dinner, your diet is all processed foods. So pick one of those meals to start with, and maybe you're swapping out the lean cuisine for the Amy's frozen meal. Maybe you're swapping out the box cereal for a protein smoothie. So there's definitely swaps you can make to start getting healthier. And if you have questions, if you're looking at your diet and you're starting to read labels and you want to make some changes and you're not sure where to start, post a comment here and I would love to chat more with you about this. And anytime you have a topic that you want me to cover in a video, send me a message or post a comment. I would love to chat more with you about all the things: yoga, habits, mindset, nutrition, exercise, fitness, wellness, all of the things. And I look forward to talking to you next week. Bye, and thanks for watching.